Welcome, welcome. Let's get everyone in. Get everyone in. What a topic we have today. You all, this is the holidays coming up. You all, this is a very special time here. It's the time of year where children go Easter egg hunting. It's the time of year that kids dress up in their holiday clothes and do their Easter speeches. This is a big tradition in the African American community. So, y'all, we want to pause here and talk. So, let's get some people on here because we're going to actually have a discussion because focusing on something that's a little different. I'm calling this co-parenting without chaos, a visitation that works for the children. So what that means is that we know that with 68% of children being raised in single parent homes, that what comes with every holiday are matters of visitation, matters of co-parenting, matters of negotiating around the time. And so we want to kind of pause today and I want to engage in this. So y'all get somebody involved. Y'all bring someone in. Let them know that Dr. White is back on YouTube, TikTok Live, and YouTube, back once again, talking about matters that are critical to the family, that are critical to the healthy development of our children. So I want to get everybody involved in this discussion here. Co-parenting without chaos. This is visitation because we know that during the holidays, that time comes where someone has to go and make those arrangements for visitation. Sometimes this goes very smooth without a hitch, but sometimes issues of visitation comes with challenges. Sometimes people break these plans, these rules. So let's get into this discussion. Y'all bring someone in. Tell someone to come on. Join this TikTok live. Get in this discussion around visitation, around co-parenting, around the holidays. Y'all know the holidays are supposed to be a very exciting time. It's supposed to be that exciting time of year where we engage in the celebrations and we do all of that, but it doesn't always come out that way. And so I'm going to take a moment here focusing on those is that, tonight we're going to talk about something that causes real tension. This is visitation, right? But here's the truth. Your child's behavior is not random. When visitation time comes, when it's time to have involvement, it's a developmental issue. And so when the parents don't understand how visitation and co-parenting and how that particular issue impacts the children, then if they're not careful, then we'll start blaming each other. And so I want to bring people on, bring fathers on, bring mothers on, bring the co-parenting, bring those who are functioning well, who manage visitation well. Y'all bring them in because some of you have some very important information and insight beyond me. I've been working with families for 30 years. So I want to bring people in so we can engage in this discussion. Pastor, glad to see you. I love to see that. Gage, have people coming in. Aaron, glad to have you come in. Y'all bring someone in. Let's get your insight. Let's get your input around visitation during the holidays. Y'all, they're here. This is the issue that literally comes up every year. So y'all bring some people in here. This is a discussion once again. Y'all, we're going to get into this because I think this is really important. Co-parenting without chaos, the visitation and how it can work around the holidays, right? So we have to stop guessing, right? We have to start parenting and understanding how visitation works. Should pastors live in the lavish lifestyle while some parishioners go to bed hungry? That's a good question. Something for another time. And I think for that great question, I think we'll certainly bring someone in this discussion. But those pastors with children, those pastors that have to do the pastoral counseling around visitation, let me restructure that and focus on that as an issue. But good to have you on that. Mr. Hollywood, glad to have you on. We're talking about parenting. I don't care if you are a middle to upper class family, everything's going well, or if you are a struggling, financially fragile family. I'm going to tell y'all that when it comes to visitation, sometimes it's the exact same issue. So let's talk about it. Y'all bring someone in, encourage your friends to come on and be a part of this. Y'all let somebody know that we're going to be discussing co-parenting, right? Strategic for the holidays, absolutely. This piece here, we're going to give you all some tips that I think is very important. We're going to discuss the co-parenting issues, and you can also in this point jump in and ask some questions. Again, you all, I've been doing this for over 30 years, you all, of working with supervising visits, doing monitor visits, working on mediations, monitoring the visits. And so believe me, what I'm going to share with y'all is some important input. So y'all come on in and get involved in this discussion. Join the those of you who are watching me on YouTube, you all jump on in. I'm going to try to kind of pivot between both of these, but I am valuing this that much that I want people to come on in, because there are too many children that began to have anxiety, y'all, that began to in some ways act up leading up to the holidays. The amount of uncertainty some of our children deal with. So you all, this is why we're going to be intentional around this discussion of visitation and co-parenting around the holidays. So we're not going to bypass this. Some of this, you all, is going to come across very commonsensical, but some of this may be a little uncomfortable for some of you to chew on. So I want to get some co-parents, some custodial parents on too, right? Y'all bring some of those people in. Wilbur, good to see you. Bishop Larry, glad to have you on. Y'all, if you're going through this, or you know someone who has to deal with this every holiday, Easter, Christmas, y'all see these visitation issues even during the summer. So these become the things that we want to engage in. And so, have you ever felt like your child completely acts completely different? The first question before we jump into this, y'all listen to the question that I'm posing. Have you ever felt like your child acts completely different after they come home for a visit? Right? So you send them to go spend the weekend with or that organized visit with the non-custodial parent, and the child comes home, and now all of a sudden the child is behaving a little different. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah, I'd love to hear some input. Or how about this? For those of you who are getting the child, you see, especially the younger ones, you see them acting out a lot when it's time to drop off or the return. You all, these are some honest questions that we have to engage in. So I love to hear from you all, right? Does your child seem to act a little different when they come back from a visit, right? That's especially for you co-parents, you custodial parents. We have to begin to engage in this. So you all, y'all come on in and jump into this here, because visitation, custody matters, all this is absolutely important. I am going to start this discussion with a fundamental truth, and that is there are different matters that exist when you're married, and this discussion when it comes to visitation when you're not married is two separate things. And so it's an honest discussion and a dialogue, because oftentimes when you are separated or you're divorced, a lot of times there are already a visitation arrangement or agreement that's in place. And then both parents at that time have the responsibility of following or maintaining that visitation. It's a little different when you're not married. And so, but regardless of whether or not there's a visitation order in place or not, I need you all to understand that the visitation order, when there is one, is nothing more than a guideline. It's really something to fall back on when the custodial parents are no longer functioning together. So that's really what we're dealing with. Y'all, Chuck, glad to have you on. This Jerk, glad to see you on. Y'all come on in and jump in this discussion. Dr. Eldridge, glad to have you on in this discussion. So this is where we certainly start, that I want to make sure that it's very, very clear that when there is a court-ordered visitation, that gives the rules. That gives the rules for the pickup time. That gives the rules for the drop-off time. That gives the rules for where you all are to do that exchange. And when there's an order in place, if someone decides not to follow that order, there are repercussions, right? There's the any attorney who might jump on here, they understand that when the order's not followed, someone can file a contempt. And we'll talk a little bit about that too, just based off of my experience when someone is not following the rules. So we are discussing co-parenting. We're discussing visitation during the holidays. You also get someone join in on this piece here. I'm Dr. Gio White. Everything I cover, you can see it in my podcast on the Dr. Gio White Show. Certainly some of these TikTok lives, and you can even jump on over to Instagram and follow this discussion. So let me go. Let me get into this. So when there is a visitation order, then the rules can be followed. That means that there's an objective document that you follow. And again, you all, these are guidelines. And I know there may be some attorneys on here that may be uncomfortable about this, or judges that may be uncomfortable about this. But here's what I have taken a strong stance on in this regard, is that when you have a highly functional co-parenting relationship, I didn't say a good relationship, I didn't say everything is, I'm saying when it's functional, meaning that there's no more emotional investments that's taking place between the two, but they can do the exchanges and not have issues with one another. So the visitation becomes a good guideline. And watch this, when the visitations are happening, and the co-parenting are doing the exchanges the way they're supposed to, there's little to no stress on the child. Why? Because the child can anticipate when it's time to be picked up. The child can anticipate when it's time to be dropped off. When there's good co-parenting between them, even if the plans have to be altered. For example, something comes up, a school event or whatever like that. When there's healthy co-parenting, then it's just a simple call, the adjustment is made, and you're good to go. But when the relationships are hostile, when the co-parenting is strained, and when people are treating the visitation order like a Bible, then it becomes a lot more difficult. But again, you all will see as I talk about the stages and ages and what visitation should look like based off of those ages, you'll see it. So you all, we're going to talk about visitation today. We're going to talk about the ages and stages, what to expect for the children around those particular ages. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stress that based off the age of the child, what it can look like when the custodial parent relationship is kind of difficult. Jeff Johnson, glad to have you on here. Elizabeth, good to see you. Purple Passion, glad to have you on. So we're jumping off with this first question that, and I'm going to see y'all. Do you and your co-parent argue about the time, then get into it about what's in the best interest of the child? Do y'all ever see that happen? Maybe not with you, but if y'all got some friends that every time it's time to for visitation, conflicts occur. Y'all know anybody like that? What does that look like? Or what are some of the common issues that you all see people getting into around those issues? So let's talk. Those of you who are dealing with visitation, I need to hear from y'all. Those of you where it's going very well, y'all get ready, because people are watching this stream, and I want y'all to share your experiences, share your insight in those particular areas, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by having a discussion, first and foremost, about visitation by the age and what I'm referring to as the stage of the child, right? Visitation by the age and the stage of the child. Now, these, you all, are not concrete, right? These are literally just some guidelines that I want y'all to take under consideration, right? Because this can also vary by how that relationship with the custodial parent or the non-custodial parent began, or where that relationship is at times. So there is a couple, the disclaimers. Also, there's some disclaimers where there is a good deal of distance between the parents. All that comes into place. But let's just jump into this, all right? So now, when it comes to visitation of an infant, I'm talking about between 0 and 18 months, right? Here at this age and stage, right, you have these small children. They don't understand separation. They feel safety or they feel stress, right? This is the fundamental stage of 0 to 18 months, constant crying, communication, not manipulation. These are the areas of this stage for the child. They are constantly worrying, right? So at this age, they're still getting to learn the parents' voices. That's why I put a big emphasis from even from when the time the child, especially that third trimester, where the child is still in the mother's stomach. Now the child can hear what's going on the outside. Man, I'm going to tell you, your children can get familiar with your voice on the outside of that belly by you talking to them and humming to them. But when it comes to visitation, they communicate primarily through crying. And that's a form of communication. So parenting, when it comes to around these issues, it becomes what? Consistency, nurturing, and responsiveness. Now, when a child is between the age of 0 and 18 months, visitation looks a little different, right? So at this age, visitations may be short, they may be frequent visits, right? Avoid the long separation, right? There can be some overnights, but be careful with that early on. Focus on the bonding at this age. So for those of you fathers who are getting a visitation or non-custodial parents, because that could be a mother, that in this phase, while the visits may be a little short, during this time, you're focusing on the feeding, the rocking, the diapering, and these things. So visitation, therefore, it makes sense. You wouldn't expect long-term visits when the primary food that a child is receiving or nutrients that a child is needing, for example, is from breast milk and things in that regard. So the logic is going to dictate that the visitation is not going to be long. So parents at this stage, visitation is not about time. It is about attachment. Right now, the attachment is something that becomes important. Attachment is something that becomes important for both the custodial parent and the non-custodial parent. Right now, you all, here's what things looks a little different here. Good to see you, Ann. Good to see you, Deborah. Glad to have you on. One of the things get a little different is that now we run into this thing about how people are socialized, right? And how society structures this, where we operate on the premise that mothers are the nurturers and the fathers are the doers. So the doing is just in the form of just going to go do things. And the on the flip side of that, the other side of that is in the form of going to go get the diapers, going to do it. But there's a bonding that needs to take place here as well. So I'm going to encourage you, 0 to 18 months, when you got them, I'm going to tell you, y'all, fathers, men, you need to participate in the diaper changing. You need to participate in the holding and the bonding. So visitation, even if it's short, it looks like that. The children need to learn your smell. I think this is something that's absolutely critical at this stage. So if I have any non-custodial parents or people that are doing a visitation of that issue, do you agree with that the visit should be short? Or do you think it doesn't matter how long, if it's your child and if it's a newborn, you think that it's okay for that child to be with you for a whole week? I'd love to hear your view on that. But at that age, again, 0 to 18 months, the primary focus when you do have the visitation is around bonding, connection, the child learning your smell, learning your voice, learning your contact. And so it's important. So for you custodial parents, I'm going to tell you that this is also very important. You have to allow that attachment and that imprinting to begin to occur with the father as well. And so I'm going to push that. Now, some of y'all might have some issues with it, but I'd love to definitely hear your perspective and your views. But that's 0 to 18 months. So you're not expecting any long visitation during this. So it's Easter. That might be, if the agreement is on Easter Sunday, 0 to 18 months. That means that may very well be showing up on Easter, or maybe arriving at the church or whatever. But we want those at that age. We want those visits to be short. We want them to be centered around the bonding and the connection at that age. But now, when you get to the toddler stage, right? When we get to the toddler stage, it looks a little different. Now, again, for those of you who are jumping in right now, we're talking about, we're discussing co-parenting and visitation schedule for the infants, for the toddlers during the holidays, right? And so we started with the 0 to 18 months. And so now, when you look at 18 months to 2 years, these are the toddlers. And so now we began to see what happens. Now, for toddlers, what we see here, the key insight that I want to offer up is fear and abandonment is real, right? So y'all understand that when it comes to, even leaving the daycare, and some of you may have seen this, where you drop the child up at the daycare and they're having an absolute fit like the world is ending. And by the time you pick them up, they're excited and they have no idea that they panicked and act like the world was caving in when you dropped them off, right? And so for parents, this becomes a difficult time here. Common ancestry says, is a long time visitation good at this age? I'm going to tell you, even here, there is some precautions around that. But I want to give a couple shout outs as I continue going. Shout out to the ancestry folks that have logged in. Shout out to Imani that is logged in. Shout out to Philly that is logged in. You all tell somebody about this, like this, and be prepared for the discussions here. But now where we are, y'all, is we're talking about the toddler age, 18 months to 2 years, right? I told you all that at this stage, abandonment is real. And not for you as an adult, that's the whole nother matter. But what I'm talking about is the issue for the children, the toddlers at this age, because it's not unusual. When visitation matters begin to click in, you're going to see some behaviors: clinging, right? The regression, going back to an earlier having a fit, sleeping issues. So when visitations began to start kicking in, you're going to see some acting out, some physical manifestations of that acting out, difficulty sleeping and other matters in that regard. So parents, what I want you all to do here is reassurance and routine. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now: for all these early stages where the children do not yet have a full understanding or concept of time, they began to keep time around routines, right? So here's an example. Way back before SpongeBob SquarePants came on around the clock, it used to come on one day a week. And my children always knew what day of the week it was, because that was the day, whatever their favorite show is. And so at those stages, and even time of evening, the time around routine. So routine becomes absolutely critical at this stage. So the toddlers, the visitation now looks a little different. So for those of you non-custodial parents negotiating visitation, and you have a toddler between 18 to 2 years, then the frequent visits, I think, is important. Predictable contact. This is the time. This is the time, you all, where if you can FaceTime or you could dual, you can have a routine call on a certain day of the week. Y'all, I'm going to talk about persistence versus pestering in a minute. But this is the period of time here that where the visitations began to take place. They're frequent. You have to make them predictable, though. They have to be predictable. The child has to be able to match that pickup with an event. So before I get going, those of you who are doing visitation, who are engaged, you co-parents, how's it going for you? Um, Lee Jack, do you have it? Misty, do you have it? Vinny, do you do visits? I'd love to hear from you all. Ooh, excuse me. So here, between the ages of 18 to 2 years old, this is when the overnight visits are introduced. And they become consistent. Now, here's my warning. I already told you all that toddlers undergo this fear of abandonment. So for those of you custodial parents who are required or have decided to allow the overnight visit, I'm letting you know right now, the child is going to may act like, I'm saying may, the child may act like the world is coming to an end because of that, because you're doing the visitation or you're letting a non-custodial parent see the child. That is normal behavior. Now, again, and let me throw this little caveat. This also looks different from first-time parents to parents that have multiple children. Y'all keep that in mind too. First-time parents, this everything I'm talking about, the emotions are on steroids at this level, right? So the child is feeling abandonment, and you as a custodial parent, especially as a first-time parent, you may be feeling matters of abandonment at this age. So I just want to make sure that I throw that out. But the visitation, this is when the overnight visits began. This is where that time begins to occur. Now, let me add this. At toddler, if there's an order that then allows for longer than an overnight visit, let's say 4 nights, then what I'm going to say is this. Don't just pick up the child and leave. If you have a visitation that's scheduled with a toddler, 18 to 2 years old, and you get to have that child 3 to 4 days, what I'm going to say is don't just get the child and leave, right? You might need to spend a couple hours, go get ice cream or go do something like that, so the transition will be a little better, especially if it is a required visit. Anthony, man, good to see you, man. I was wondering where you went. I didn't see you last week. Glad to have you on. Y'all, that's one of my top viewers there. Glad to have you on there, man, and welcome back. So we're talking about visitation and parenting during a time of this chaos and what this begins to look like. So visitation of the non-custodial parent, 18 to 2 years. For you custodial parents, I'm letting you all know that this can be a little difficult. But the adjustments can be made when the child can even understand the routine around the departure. So I'm emphasizing, and I'm going in real hard on this, that consistency builds security. Let me say that again. Consistency builds security in the child. Inconsistency creates anxiety, right? And so if nothing else, you all, consistency is most important. So that means, parents, when you change the schedule and now that routine is thrown off, the child is going to have some issues. So what do you all think about that? Anthony says that Anthony doesn't have an issue with the visitation. But however, Anthony, certainly if you got any of your boys who are dealing with that, y'all bring them in and let them know. But glad to see you stick your head in anyway, Anthony, always. Christine Wright, visitation, what does this look like? You know anybody who's dealing with or have to negotiate visitation around the holidays? Y'all, I'm doing this because we see that we have Good Friday, we have the Easter weekend, and this is someone's weekend with the child. And for some people, this may very well be the first weekend that now the child is going to be with the other parent. And so I'm pausing and having this conversation because I want us to begin to have some understanding of what to expect. You listen, you all, I'm talking about what to expect in the child. And I'm talking about how you as the parent, how to deal with and manage that. And so y'all bring someone on to engage on that guy on the couch, man. Glad to see you. Sexy singer, sexy. Oh, I can't make that out. Glad to have you on as well. When it comes to our children, we let them choose. Now, I like that, Anthony, but that depends on the age. I'm pretty sure you're not talking about no toddlers. We might that might look a little different for some of the older children, and I'm going to get to that and what that looks like. Right now, for those of you who are joining, we are discussing visitation schedules for the toddlers now and their fear of abandonment that may show up. And so let's take a look at it. Glad to have you all on my YouTube people. Glad to see y'all coming on in this regard. Now, visitation doesn't have to be a time of chaos. I told you in all that we do, consistency builds security, consistency creates anxiety in the children. 9 to 14. So Anthony, if you're able to hold on for a second or come back and look at this, you can see if what I recommend for the 9 to 14-year-old is consistent with what you do. And remember, Anthony, the question I have for you, my brother, is this. How do you and the mother work that out? How is it possible that you all are able to do that and not have any stress? And I'm telling you right now, Anthony, there are folks who are watching this, folks who know someone who goes through it during visitation time. And so all the work that I do, you all, is strength-based, right? And so what that means is that some people study and investigate issues from a problem standpoint, what's not working. But I believe that we can learn so much more. And as a professor, university professor, I teach strength-based family therapy, strength-based research, strength-based administration and analysis. And that means the need to study what's working and apply our understanding of what's working, how it's working, and apply that to those areas where it's not working. And so that means that I have a strong emphasis in what makes co-parenting work. For some of you fathers and mothers out there that are doing it, I need to understand what you're doing and how it works so that those who are struggling with it, I can say, this is what I've learned from those who says it worked. Deficit model of study, investigation, and research, you study the problem and then you master the understanding of the problem, but then you're left with only making inferences about what will work. So I like to reverse it. So right now, y'all, we're talking about parenting and visitation in this particular time of the holidays, and that it doesn't have to be chaotic. We're now looking at the age of 3 to 5-year-olds. So if some of you have children between the age of 3 to 5-year-olds, and it's now time to do the visitation, there's some key insights that I want to give you for the children at this age when it comes to visitation. Between the 3 to 5 years old, they tend to blame themselves for everything. They tend to believe that whatever's not working with the parents, they have something to do with it, right? So the world, and you will even see around other ages as well, that you have those who believe that the world kind of evolves around them. And so that's why we jump into it and we look at this in this regard. So 3 to 5 years old, they tend to blame themselves for everything. Behavior, fear, regression, magical thinking that you might see in this age here. So what is magical thinking? Magical thinking. Good to see you, Jay Mills. Glad to have you on. What is the magical thinking for 3 to 5-year-olds? My daddy's coming. My daddy will be here tomorrow, or a school function. My daddy will be here. Or my mommy and my daddy, they love each other. They engage in the magical thinking. And sometimes 3 to 5 years old around visitation, they will begin to make up things of how they think things ought to be. And so I'm offering this up around the visitation time because we began to see this. Parents, at this age of 3 to 5, when it comes to visitation, this is what I need you all to focus on. Reassurance, right? And that's important. I'll be here to pick you up, or daddy will be here, or you'll come back and you go to sleep 3 times. And then when you wake up the 3rd time, then daddy's going to bring you back. So the reassurance is important. Explanation. Yes. We do this as adults. We'll tell somebody, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. That actually has real live meaning. There's some things sometimes you have to actually explain it so a 5-year-old will understand it. And of course, affection. Even for you men with your sons, daughters, the affection and helping them to understand at this age that the love is there and it is consistent. But when it's time for visitation, here's the visitation reality that I offer up. First of all, weekend visits are appropriate. When you hit these ages here of weekend or extended visits, that's very appropriate at this age. However, it must be consistent and reliable. So I'm telling you all, if you have a visitation agreement that says first, third, and fifth weekend every month, alternating holidays, alternating birthdays, then even if you don't have a court order articulating that, whatever you and as co-parents agree on, I'm going to tell you, you have to be consistent. So what I'm telling you is that you will do more damage and more emotional harm to the child when it's inconsistent. And how it shows up, this is the part I need y'all to understand. When we are inconsistent, especially in this particular age group here, and right now we're talking about 3 to 5-year-olds. When you are not consistent, you will see them regress to an earlier age. You'll see some of the acting out and the crying. So the visitation that I'm offering up, I think it's important. You must be consistent and reliable. Now, if you have your child between the age of 3 and 5 years old, and this is why co-parenting becomes most important. And y'all hear this very well. When you have your child, it's important that you allow him or her to call the other parent just to check in, FaceTime, Zoom, whatever, to check in, just to lay eyes, just to hear the voice. As co-parents, this becomes something that I'm telling you, you want to begin to integrate. Now, when the co-parenting is a little more hostile, then this becomes a bit problematic. Some parents will say, I got the child and you don't need to hear from the child until we come back. That might work emotionally for you, adult person, but that can be traumatic for the child, especially at that particular age. So 3 to 5 years old and you gone for 3 days and you have no contact, no communication, it becomes problematic. But healthy co-parenting or functioning or even moving to that level, allowing the child to talk, to call, to frequent. Whenever if the child says, can I talk to mommy? Yeah, we call mommy, you FaceTime. And yes, for those of you parents who get the child, I don't want you to be shocked if you do allow the time and the child says, I want to come home, right? It's okay, right? Anthony says, absolutely. Mine did FaceTime with the ex and got mad, but I made it happen. And so, yes, and so you all seeing from the streets perspective, Anthony is saying with his children, given the age, he allowed the FaceTiming to occur. I'm telling you all, in this digital age, it is one of the healthiest things that you can do to facilitate the ease of the child and beginning to make them a little bit more comfortable. Because again, again, they will have that level of comfort. The elementary age, 6 to 9 years old. Things now, and I'm going to tell you, parents, I'm going to give y'all a warning right now. Anthony can probably speak to this. As your children get older, y'all need to understand this. As the children get older, they begin to care less and less and less about what the doggone court order may say. So that means as the children begin to get older, that means not only you may be in conflict with the other parent about what thus saith the order, now you're conflicting with the child about what thus saith the order. And I'm telling you all that that's absolutely natural as the kids begin older. Why? Because they have a life other than yours, right? So at the elementary age, 6 to 9 years old, the key insight. So in everything I'm giving you all key insights I'm giving you all the behavior, I'm giving you the parenting focus, and I'm giving you all the visitation reality. So at 6 to 9 years old for the children, the key insight, the children feel deeply and start to truly understand loss. They truly begin to understand that this non-custodial parent may not come back. That means we have to begin at this age to be careful what we say. We also, at this stage, you all have noticed, now children are beginning to, watch this, you all, they're beginning to measure what their normal life looks like compared to the other children, right? So you all, for those of you who are logging on in, now we're discussing co-parenting strategies for our children. We just did 3 to 5. Now we're doing ages 6 to 9 years old, right? And so you all tell somebody to log in. This is an opportunity to get some nuggets around visitation around the holidays. So children at this age, and this is very interesting, you all pay attention to this, the behavior, sadness. You can begin to see some school issues showing up. Between 6 to 9, they're trying to fix the parent. Between this age here, 6 to 9, they still believe that the world evolves around them. At 6 to 9, they still believe that they have something, a role in the parents coming together, or they believe that they have a role in how the parents communicate with each other. So here, that's the behavior, but the parenting focus here is emotional support and stability. 6 to 9 years old, you all, the elementary age school now, they're seeing other fathers show up. They're seeing other parents attending the school functions. Now they're participating in little plays at the school. 6 to 9 years old, now they become aware of who is in the audience and who's not. Y'all seen all those videos show up where you see a child on the stage getting ready to perform, and you see them kind of looking around, and then they lay eyes on the grandparent or they lay eyes on the parent. So 6 to 9 years old is when your presence and your involvement becomes most important. It is the emotional support at this age and the stability. Parents, this is the age where you have to learn how to function and be in the same room at the same time when your children are doing events at the school and other activities. So 6 to 9 years old, here's the visitation reality. Now they can handle longer stays, up to a week, 2 weeks. They can maintain their school and friend activities because now they got the social media, they got the digital world that they can engage in. So they're communicating, they're talking with their friends. Before FaceTime, before social media, visitation occur, it would be very difficult because when they would go visit another parent, they would have no contact other than picking up the phone. But now that's not an issue. They can FaceTime and they can engage in discussions with their friends online. They can play video games online. And so the separation from the friends is not as difficult. But at this age here, the other thing that is very, very important, and we emphasize here, to encourage communication with both parents. So as you all see now, we're beginning to build up in that regard. So y'all tell somebody about this discussion here, where we're talking about co-parenting in the holidays. We just finished covering the ages of 6 to 9. So by the time we get to middle school, let's see, Angela is a long time. Let's see here. Angel says, give them time. Let's see. Give them some time to communicate. Andrew, I want to give you a shout out. Glad to have you on. Trevor, glad to have you on. Sephora, glad to have you all on as we talk about this visitation. Those of you who are doing it, I'm right now finishing up the discussion of 6 to 9. But those of you who are doing visitation, what does that look like? What is that experience? Does it go well? For those of you that where the visitation goes well during the holidays, what makes it go well? For those of you, it becomes a nightmare and a headache every time. What makes it problematic? I'd love to hear your points. We're pausing here. We're at the elementary age now. We're 6 to 9 years old here. I want to emphasize, and the chief message that that I want to communicate with regard to our 6 to 9 years old: do not make them choose. Help them stay connected. So here's the nightmare that we see show up sometime at this level. Do you want to go with them? And so now the adults is forcing, when it's a dysfunctional co-parenting, the adults then began to try to force the child to choose. It is at this age, if you're not careful, then the child has to minimize the great time that they have with one parent for fear of making the other parent feel uncomfortable. And so it should not come as a surprise that by the time we get to middle school, the ages of 10 to 12 years old, you now see here loyalty and conflict begin to intensify, right? So now, y'all remember the old term, now you smell yourself. That's what we used to say. So now you smelling yourself. You're getting some courage in you, right? And so there's some natural developmental things that begin to happen in children at that age. It has nothing to do with what's going on. This age of 10 to 12 years old, middle school. I got any middle school teachers out here? I'm a university professor. I'm going to tell you, there's an age that you could put a gun to my head. I think those who teach in middle school, those folks are anointed. Those folks are literally called by God's self, not himself, herself, but God himself. You're called to do that because it's a very difficult time. But loyalty, conflicts began to intensify. At this age in middle school, what you may begin to see in the behavior of the children: anger, blaming one parent, and the alignment, right? So this is why we have to be especially careful at this age and stage, because that is a natural thing to occur, especially as the amount of tension between the co-parent and non-custodial parent intensifies. You're going to see the anger and blaming one parent and the issues of alignment. At this age, the child reaches, there is no gray area. At this age and stage, the middle school child, got to blame someone. So parents, here is why you must stay neutral. You must teach emotional expression with the child. If a child has that alignment language, you must deflect it. Now, I'm telling you, those of you who are still emotionally held hostage from the relationship, from an unhealthy standpoint, these are the parents in a dysfunctional co-parenting. Given the fact that the child is at that age and a stage, then they use that. That's where the conflicts become even more intensified. Some parents even I've seen, this is going to blow your mind. I've seen children at this age, 10 to 12, ask the non-custodial parent about child support. And there's no scenario where a 10 to 12-year-old would be engaged, or the next age, 13 to 18. There's no scenario where a 10 to 12-year-old should be talking with a parent about child support and financial issues. And so as someone who does this work, that's the tough conversation when I'll have to the parent to say, no, that's not, that child got that from you. There's no reason for a child to engage in that discussion. So the parents, this is why I want you all to stay neutral. Why I need you all to teach emotional expression, because 10 to 12 years old is where you begin to see the acting out. Here is the visitation reality. Glad to have you on, Keeley's. Glad to have you on, let's see, Moshia. Glad to see you. Joanna, glad to have you on as well here. We're talking about co-parenting and visitation during the holidays. It's a reality for everyone. We're talking about the middle school age around visitation, and this is what I'm going to tell you all. Extended stays is acceptable. This may be a week. This is the altering holidays. This may be when the summertime go. Encourage the relationship in both homes. Now, here's a piece of advice for those of you who are the non-custodial parents. When your child gets to your house, they must see their home in your house. I hope you all hear what I'm saying, is that you can't be screaming that you want your child, you want your child. I don't care, non-custodial parent, if you're a mother or the father. You can't be making all this argument about you want the child, and then the child gets to your house, and there's nothing in your house that says it's their home. Y'all, we are right now discussing co-parenting strategies for children, the ages where we are right now. We just finished 6 to 9. Now we're at 13. We're going to move to the next level. But here, I'm telling you all the message that I think is absolutely critical here is that to maintain that the children at this age, that they can maintain their peer and social life. So you got the visitation, it's occurring, it's happening, but be comfortable with the amount of time that the child spends. Now, let me tell you something. Those of you got this middle child, you got the visitation. The child is at your house. I'm telling you that you have to put pictures of that child up on the wall. They have to walk in and that house look like theirs. And even when you do all that, I don't want you to be alarmed if the child gets to your house, goes into his or her room, shut the door, you got them for the weekend, and they want to spend half the weekend in a room by themselves. Don't be alarmed. You have to certainly increase your efforts to engage. Y'all, this is going to come as a surprise, but our middle children, the video games and other things that you have to engage in, I'm going to tell you, take advantage of it. If you don't know how to play Madden, it's a damn good time to learn, right? So in this area, in this age of 10 to 12 years old, if you make them pick sides, you create emotional damage. So the big message that I want to offer up for you all here is do not make those children pick sides, because they're very, very vulnerable to that. And you're going to create more damage. You're going to create more acting out at the school. And so we get to this last age, and these are your high school, 13 and up, right? These are your high school kids. Now, when it comes to visitation, by the time you get to this point here, and I'm going to tell you, 13 and 19 high school, that visitation y'all got, I told you it is at this stage that you damn near have to throw it out the window, because they're playing sports. They have an entire independent life. And then everything you say or do at this particular age becomes a form of being disruptive to them. So the behavior that you're going to see from your high school kids when it comes to this matter of visitation: withdrawal, identity struggles, loyalty stress. Loyalty and matters of stress. You begin to see these things show up. Withdrawal. You see now that they're less bonded, less connected. They're less putting less importance of being around you and up under you. The identity struggle here. Remember, we're at an age and stage now where girls are growing and developing. Y'all actually saw this in middle school. The girls are growing and developing. They're measuring themselves up, their body construct, their body type idea. They're measuring that against other girls. Our boys who grow and develop at a much slower rate, their bodies, and when you're in middle school, it begins to take that awkward shape where suddenly the neck is unusually long or the arms are unusually long. So when you're looking at by the time you get to high school, and the way transitions begin to occur when they get older, not only you have massive changing in body structure, right? That means the kid in the ninth grade, he 5'10", and they come back in the sophomore, and now all of a sudden he's 6'3", right? So we see all these things that are happening with our children. So communication, boundaries, and guidance is what becomes very important. That's the parenting focus there. Communication, boundaries, and guidance. Y'all have to offer that up. Make sure they understand that. Again, visitation becomes problematic and challenging here. And here is where the co-parenting probably becomes most important, because if they're at the high school age, it's going to result in both parents having to be at the same place at the same time. So the reality around visitation, therefore, is flexible scheduling. Teens have input but not full control. Let me say that again. At this age, the teens have input but not full control. So you don't give your child full control over not whether or not he or she or them or they want to go to the other parent house. You can entertain how they feel. Good to see you, Harry. But they don't have full control. So at this age, I need you to prioritize the peer relationships. So it's at this phase that you got your child for the weekend, and now he or she is bringing their friends over to do the activities at your home. So it becomes important that if you're doing these visitations, it becomes very important that you prepare your child. You begin to prepare yourself and prepare your child for the extended days. Prepare your child for the particular tension or issues that may arise. Now, I need you to notice something. At every stage, the goal is not there, and it's between the parents. It's emotional stability for the child. So you all will notice that some of the tips, many of the tips that I've given is focused on the child, because I think that becomes something that is most important and most critical in this visitation time. So I want to hopefully, as we approach the holidays, some of what I've given you has been helpful and insightful. Hopefully, I'm going to put this up on the TikTok. I'll save it so you all can come back to it. There's a more extended discussion on this that you'll see on my YouTube channel. And so just contemplate these. Now, let me leave you with this. Your child is not keeping score of how much time they spend with each child, right? They're measuring how safe, they're measuring the love, and they're measuring the stability that they feel. Co-parenting is not about winning. Let me say that again. Co-parenting is not about winning. It's not about control. It is about raising a child who doesn't have to recover from their childhood. Some of us adults right now, and we have some childhood traumas related to the parental conflicts that we witnessed or that we were direct victims of. So that's why I say it's about raising a child who doesn't have to recover from their childhood, right? If you align your visitation with your child's development, you don't just reduce the conflict. Y'all hear me? You don't just reduce the conflict. You build resilience. You protect their mental health and well-being. You give them the gift of secure love in both homes. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Leah. You give them that peace in both homes. And so it's important that we pay attention and that we understand persistence versus pestering in all that we do. That you hopefully you all saw as we conclude that the consistency is one of the most important things that we see here. So I appreciate you all for logging in and paying attention. Is Resurrection Sunday coming up? I need you all for the Good Friday. Make it a good visit. Make it a good holiday. And you all make it a good time for the child. So like us, by the time we become adults, we want our children to be able to, as adults, to look back and say, I remember as a child, no, my parents, they were not together, but when it came to our visitation, when our involvement, my parents did good. That's a very important thing that we close out with, because you can ask your children to rate the function of their parent on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is, my parents are great, and a 1 is, it's a nightmare every time they're around each other. If you want to have a sobering check-in, do that little survey with your children and see what they say. But until next Tuesday, thank everyone for logging in. I'm Dr. G.L. White. You can call me the TikTok doc in this particular regard. I thank everybody who joined in, who logged in on this discussion, and you all tell somebody about what we discussed today. Share it with them. And hopefully the insight that I gave you all on today, that you could share it with someone just to say to them, I got a few tips for the visitation weekend. If you all do that, I think certainly our children will love you for it in the end. I'm Dr. Gary O. White. Thank each and every one of you for joining on in. Until next Tuesday, 6:30 p.m., you all log on and tell someone to be prepared for the next discussion. Also, go to my YouTube channel, the Dr. G.O. White Show. Take a look at all the different discussions. Y'all like, share, subscribe, and share with someone, right? This is been a great experience today. And hopefully, once again, something I gave you is helpful and beneficial for all who have watched it. Until next weekend, you all take care. Thank you. Thank you for those who have watched and stayed in the whole time. Until then,